Hey everyone! So I am talking about something that's near and dear to my heart today because so often I see clients really being weighed down by the scale. And what I mean by that is the scale is no longer serving them and they're using their weight and the number that silly scale spits out every single day in not such a positive way. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and why it's important to potentially reframe and adjust how we're approaching our body weight and how we're utilizing the scale. So first off, in performance nutrition and sports nutrition, from the very start as a student and as a performance dietitian, a lot of what we do is attached to our body weight, right? So estimating our nutrient needs, our energy needs, as well as our macronutrient needs. It's attached to estimating our hydration needs. We also use it in performance nutrition to help monitor hydration status. So if we're training in a really hot environment, if we're wondering how much fluid or how much sweat we're losing during a training session, we're using a pre and post weight to really analyze that and monitor how our hydration status is doing in kind of that short-term window. Not only that, for some athletes, their weight determines what weight class they are in their sport. So there's many different reasons why we are looking at overall body weight, but my biggest challenge and concern with clients and athletes is when they're using that body weight not so much in a positive light, and it impacts a variety of different things from anywhere from maybe the foods that we're eating, right? So if we step on the scale and say that scale is up for the day, we might feel as though we're almost throwing in the towel, right? That all or nothing mentality of if the scale is up, feeling like we're maybe failing or not doing what we want to be doing to kind of reach our goal, especially if our goal is around weight loss, we feel frustrated. And so sometimes that can lead to maybe eating anything for that day, maybe starting over on Monday, kind of that all or nothing mentality. It could also be on the flip side. Maybe the scale is showing that you're down weight that day. And so then it's okay, or giving yourself permission of having a sweet treat or kind of having that good food, bad food mentality based on what that scale is saying. So not only that, it might dictate how much we're exercising, right? So often I'll see athletes use exercise as a means of regulating our weight. So it's not so much movement for enjoyment or movement within sport. It's actually movement in punishment over what that scale is saying and what body weight is popping up on that scale. It might be used in a negative way in terms of body weight. In addition, and this is a big one, how we feel about ourselves and how we speak to ourselves, right? So it's not uncommon to get on that scale in the morning and all of a sudden that number is not what we were expecting, feeling of disappointment or negative feelings that come along with that. And that dictates how we feel about ourselves and how we take action in our day, maybe around our food choices, or like I said, exercise habits. And in general, it dictates how we feel about our bodies rather than tuning in and listening to our bodies and determining, letting our bodies and our mind indicate how we should be feeling in that day, right? Are we feeling energized? Are we feeling fatigued? Are we feeling that muscle soreness? But instead just letting the scale kind of dictate how we're going to feel in that day. When we let the scale dictate our thoughts and our actions, it creates a stress state response within the body, especially when it's those negative feelings that are popping up. And what happens when we have that stress state response, we immediately have an increase in cortisol, an increase in insulin, which is actually moving us away from what we really want typically is to have optimal metabolism, right? We want to digest, absorb, assimilate calories and nutrients as optimally as possible. We want to optimize our calorie burning capacity. And anytime that we introduce that stress state response, And oftentimes that comes when we step on the scale, we have that negative response in our mind and in our body. And instantly it's moving us in the opposite direction, causing us to not build muscle and actually store fat. So what's happening in our mind is going to dictate that hormonal response within our body. So our body can't determine stress as if we're being chased by a lion for our life, or stress as in self-created stress within our mind and the beliefs and the statements that we're telling ourselves, right? If we're not happy with that number on the scale, think of all the negative conversation that's happening within our brain throughout the given day around food, around body image, around everything that's related to our overall health and well-being and the actions that we're taking. So really super important to recognize how just stepping on the scale, interpreting that within our mind can influence the actions that we're taking, the thoughts that we're having about it, our body's response hormonally as well as metabolically can have a huge impact on how our body is metabolizing, absorbing, and calorie burning nutrients. And not only that, the actions that we're taking and how we're choosing to live our lives. So because of the influence of our society, and this is not any fault of anyone's, it's what our society has created, is this idea that if we're not in that thin ideal body type, we may not be lovable. And when we have that feeling, so often the response is that I'm not going to do XYZ until I'm at a specific weight. So it might be, I'm not going to be in a swimming suit until I weigh 125 pounds, or I'm not going to start dating until I'm a certain weight, or I'm not going to try playing a sport, or I'm not going to try out for a team, whatever it might be that might be dictating or influencing your decisions. So the scale can certainly, and body weight is an important metric. However, I think we give it more weight per se, no pun intended, than what it really deserves. And it can influence so many different aspects. So if you are feeling like the scale is having a larger impact or a bigger weight on your day-to-day than what you really want to give that little plastic or glass device, if you want to take that power back and stop letting that dictate how you feel, how you act, and how your body is metabolizing nutrients, I would encourage you to try removing the scale as a measurement and unit so that you can remove that measurement of success and instead turn in within your body and determine, how are your energy levels? How are you sleeping? How are you recovering? So are you feeling improvements in terms of muscle soreness? Are you feeling delayed in terms of muscle recovery? Are you experiencing a lower rate of perceived exertion? Are trainings easier, or competition is feeling more natural, is feeling less exhausting? What is overall heart rate? What is the distance or the speed, right? The speed of which you're running. What are those performance metrics that can be an indicator of how your body is responding to training, to nourishment, rather than using that scale? Especially because the scale is not always a very good indicator of what's happening in terms of body composition, right? I just recently had an athlete who was concerned about the scale bumping up, and she had done a body composition test 4 years prior. So we had scheduled another body composition DEXA scan. And what we actually found is, although the scale was up, she had gained all muscle mass over that 4-year span. And so when we think about that scale going up and down, it can be a really poor indicator of what's actually happening in terms of body composition. And sometimes if we're using that as a dictator to adjust our food intake, if we're under fueling or improperly fueling overall because of what we're seeing with that scale, that can actually negatively impact that body composition overall, and it might cause us to lose that muscle mass, which is going to directly impact performance. So I hope that that gives you a new perspective of how we can look at different a different mindset around the scale and really recognize how it can impact our actions, our mindset, and our thoughts, which can in turn impact our metabolism, our body weight, our body composition, all of those things, our overall performance. So if you are struggling with your body weight, if you're struggling with kind of removing the scale from the mix and you're feeling kind of tied to that number and you're wanting some support, I encourage you to reach out. I'd love to see if my support is what you're looking for and help kind of shift that mindset, shift that languaging around our body weight to really set you up for success in terms of overall performance, but also just nourishment for an overall healthy lifestyle and healthy approach to health and wellness.